So you're ready to buy a fishing reel and you don't understand what gear ratio means. In this video, I'm going to explain it. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. We're going to talk gear ratio today. We talked fishing reels in another video, and I didn't touch on gear ratio because it can get somewhat of a lengthy subject sometimes. So I wanted to talk about gear ratio today. So you go into the store and you're looking for a reel, and you find a nice reel. You're like, that's great, but it's important to understand what the gear ratio is because it depends on what kind of fishing you're going to do and why that gear ratio is important. So I'm going to break that down. Or better yet, your dad or a relative gives you a reel and says, here, you can have this, go mess around with it. Well, you need to find the gear ratio on that reel so you know what it's retrieving at. So let's break down gear ratio. So gear ratio has three numbers. It's got a first number, separated by a period, there's a middle number, there's a colon, and then we have the last number. So let's touch on the last number first. All the last number is saying that from the point your reel handle begins to move and makes one complete 360-degree rotation and stops where you started, that's what that number represents. It's one complete turn. And so what that means is, let's say for instance, in fact, I'll use this reel as an example. This is a 7:5 gear ratio, and a 7:5 gear ratio for one complete turn of the handle, I'm retrieving 34 inches of line back onto the spool. So now we know what that number is. You can put that out of your mind. Let's start with the first number, because really the middle number, it's not that important. It's just a fractional number. It's pretty inconsequential. Let's look at the first number. That's going to determine your reel speed based on each turn, 360-degree turn of the handle. Now, gear ratios range. I found them as low as in the 4s, and I have recently found them as high as in the 10s. Your lower numbers are going to retrieve less inches per turn onto your reel, okay? And so sometimes if you're researching reels on the internet or something, it might say IPT, that's inches per turn, okay? So one complete turn, that's how many inches. So as an example, say a 6:4-1 is going to retrieve 25 inches of line. As I just said, a 7:5-1 will be 34 inches of line. And then you get into your higher speed reels, like say a 9:3-1, you're looking at 37 inches of line being retrieved onto the spool for each 360-degree turn. So now we understand what the numbers are. So now let's talk about how you should choose your gear ratio. So if you're gifted a reel, you don't have a choice. But if you're buying a reel, now you have a choice. Please keep in mind, there's lots of manufacturers of reels, and not all manufacturers will cover the entire spectrum of gear ratios. As an example, you might find one brand that doesn't have any gear ratios in the 9s or 10s, okay? So maybe their highest gear ratio is an 8.0-1 gear ratio. So it is what it is. You're just gonna have to accept that. So your lower end gear ratios, let's talk about your 4s and 5s. You'll find those commonly like, if you buy a small spinning reel for trout fishing or crappie fishing, those very commonly come in a 4:1 type ratio. In fact, this reel here is a 5:2-1 ratio, and I use this for salmon steelheading on our Pacific Northwest rivers. Now, I like this reel because we're free drifting on the river, so we're moving, and when the fish hits, when they set the hook, there's not a whole lot of line that they have to pick up to fight that fish. So when they are reeling, they're not recovering that much line because I do need the fish to wear itself out a little bit before we net it. So that lower gear ratio is great for me. I wouldn't want a higher gear ratio. You know, they're really good also, your lower gear ratios, like in bait cast, would be good for like a crankbait, some type of bait that has resistance on it, so that you're not over cranking on the bait with your higher speeds. Now your 6s and 7s, so like a 6-4 to 1 or 7-5 to 1, those type of gear ratios, somewhere in that ballpark. Those are gonna be really great as an all-around reel. I mean, you could probably buy 5 or 6 of those, put them on your 5 or 6 rods, and you could do everything you wanted to do, right? You know, they're really good for a wide variety of baits. Moving baits, chatter baits, swim baits, topwater poppers, all sorts of stuff like that. So very versatile. So your higher speed reels, your 8s, your 9s, your 10s, you know, those are gonna be really good for punch style baits, jigs, you know, throwing like a frog up on some lily pads where you set the hook and you really need to catch up on the line to turn the head of that fish so that you can fight and land the fish. So understanding gear ratios, it's actually pretty simple, right? It's the first number you need to remember. The middle number, pretty inconsequential. And the last number just means it's a full rotation of the handle, 360 degrees. If you like our videos, give us a thumbs up. Hit that bell icon, you'll get notified of our new videos coming out. Until next time, thanks for watching.